Today we're going to be talking about how to handle criticism while you're on the way to your dream. Oftentimes when God gives us a vision, most of the times the vision is also accompanied with criticism. So how can I get over the criticism that I'm facing today? In our Bibles, Nehemiah 4:13 through 14 says this: "Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall and at the exposed places, posting them by their families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, officials, and rest of the people, 'Don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives, and your homes.'" I love this story because Nehemiah and the people are literally at the edge of either rebuilding the wall or leaving it in the rubble that it's in. When they start rebuilding this wall, Sanballat, the governor over their area, sends them a message and says, "Listen, why are these Jews trying to rebuild the wall? I mean, they have more rubble than wall in the first place." Then his servant says their walls are so sensitive that even if a small fox stood on top of them, they would crumble. How do you handle when people that you are underneath or people around you are pointing out all the gaps and deficiencies in the plan or vision that God has given you? Sometimes criticism can be very discouraging because you're thinking that you've made a lot of progress and it seems like people around you are just pointing out all the faults in the process. But Nehemiah does something particular with this criticism. He does something that I love. The first thing he does is that he turns the criticism into confidence. Now watch, because Nehemiah says, okay, since they pointed out all the gaps, I'm going to post people, I'm going to post men, guards. We're going to plug those gaps. We're going to post people by those families. We're going to do what we can do with what they're telling us in criticism. And I love that he doesn't allow the criticism of others to disrupt his process. He allows them to upgrade his project. Microsoft is one of the greatest companies probably of all time. They love criticism. Between every new release, it is estimated that they do about 3 years of criticism analysis. In other words, they go through all the mail they get, all the user-friendly information that they need to receive. They go through all of that and they say, with this criticism, we're going to use it to upgrade our program. They say that there's no way that they can upgrade their program unless people let them know about the bugs, about the gaps, about the holes. They love criticism so much that even those who have not used Microsoft and criticized their program, they still want to hear from them, because they say that they want to know even what their competitors say, just looking on the outside, looking in. They just want to hear everybody's criticism, because without criticism, they know that they cannot get better. I believe that critics and criticism is often a gift from God in disguise, because when people criticize your dream and your vision, they force you to step their game up. When people criticize you at their job, they force you to do better at your job. When people criticize you at school or while you're playing, they force you to grow better, do better, mature. Criticism, not all the times, friends, is such a bad thing. It's just how you take the criticism. Will you allow it to deflate your confidence, or will you transform that criticism into the confidence you need to get the job done? Nehemiah not only turns criticism into confidence, but he also gives the people a why. Now, this is important because they're at the point right now where they've heard so much criticism, so much negative feedback that they can't even remember why they're doing this in the first place. And have you ever been there in your vision with God that you've received so much criticism that you're wondering, like, God, why in the world am I even doing this? I mean, if it's going to look this dumb at the beginning, why should I keep on going? I believe you should keep on going because your vision isn't about you necessarily. Your vision is about the future. Nehemiah says, we need to keep on building this wall for our friends, our families, and our loved ones. Friends, while you're on the job, while you're in the middle of your vision, while you're in the middle of planning that new company, whatever you're doing, remember that you're not doing it just for you. You're doing it, God has given you that vision for your family also. Remember that the why is much more important, because if you can remember why you're doing it, you won't take the criticism so hard, because you're not doing it for your critics. You're doing it for the people who you're going to feed. God did not give you this vision just so you could give up with a little criticism, friends. Remember your why. Remember your children. Remember your spouse. Remember those who aren't even here yet, because here's what's interesting in the text. There's no way that everybody in that crowd had a wife, had a husband, or had a family. So for those people, he was talking to their potential futures. And here is why you cannot give up. Because God, oftentimes when he gives you a vision, he's speaking to the future you can't even see yet. Don't give up. Remember, you have a why. And finally, he not only convinces the people to stay in this because he gave them a why, or because he turned their criticism into confidence, he also told them that we may have a bad team, but we do have a good leader. Now, it's interesting because Nehemiah says, now, after all of this, remember your families, all that, he says, remember the Lord who is great and awesome. He never says, remember that you have great construction skills. He never says, remember that you all graduated with this degree in architecture. He never says any of that. What he does say is, remember that the Lord is great and awesome. In other words, he says, listen, I'm looking around. We don't have the best team, but we do have a good leader in Jesus. And that's my word for someone today, that sometimes when you get in a rut with your vision, remember that your team may not be doing well right now, but a great leader can always get a last place team to first place. There were Marines practicing on this field of combat, and it's a recruiting exercise to prove that they can be Marines. They're out there, they're all carrying these boats, they're doing this exercise, and a senior recruiting officer comes to the field. The lower level recruiting officer is looking around. Same team is winning, same team is losing. The older recruiting officer says, listen, what I want you to do is switch the first place leader with the last place leader and see what happens. So he's like, man, okay, I'm just going to listen and do it. They switch the leaders, and wouldn't you believe that the first place leader that went on a bad team, that team went to first place, and the last place leader that got on the first place team went to last place. All I'm trying to tell you, friends, is that it doesn't matter necessarily the team, it does matter who the leader is. And rest assured that if Jesus is on your team, even if you are in last place, you'll end up in first place. Be blessed.